Welcome back, students. So in the previous class we have seen about how the charges are obtained, like how we got the static charges, and we seen about the properties of the charges. So we have told about that the properties, in case of properties of charges, the charges are conservative in nature, then the charges are additive, and the charges are quantized in nature. Now see here, in the previous class we have spoken about charging. Like I told you in the previous class, if I have a silk cloth, right? If I have a silk cloth, and if I say I have a glass rod, so this is a glass rod. Now here you will find that the charges were there on the bodies because they were touching each other. So when these charges, these electrostatic charges were produced actually by physical contact. So now the question arises, can we charge a body without touching it with a charged body? Like for example, see here, as we had it in a gold leaf electroscope, remember this, I said we had a knob here and we had a container here. It was something like this, and here we had the gold leaf, right? And then I said, okay, we are touching it, so if this is the positive here, then the positive had come here like this. So this was basically, we induced the charges, or we had induced the charges on the gold leaf by touching it. So here there was a physical contact. But can we induce charges on the body without touching? So the induction of electric charges on a conducting body due to presence of nearby body is known as electrostatic induction. So we have a method to charge a body without touching. So we have method of charging a body without physical contact, and this process is known as electrostatic induction. So today we will be talking about electrostatic induction. So here you have understood that we are charging a body without touching or without physical contact is known as electrostatic induction. So the induction of electric charges on a conducting body due to the presence of nearby charged body is known as electrostatic induction. Now this can be very well understood, okay? This can be very well understood with the help of an example. Like for example, let us suppose if I have a sphere, okay, this is a metal sphere, right? I have a metal sphere, and since it is connected to the ground, so this is going to be an insulator so that the charges should not go into the ground. So this part basically is your insulator. So insulator stand, and say this is your conducting sphere. Now if I want to charge this sphere, I want to charge this sphere positively like this. So one way of charging is by direct contact, like you bring a glass rod, okay, so this is a sphere, so you have bring a glass rod, touching it, and then what will be happening is these charges will get uniformly distributed, and this is one way. So we want basically by electrostatic induction. So what we do is, if I want this kind of figure where I want the charges, positive charges on the metal sphere, then let's see what kind of method is employed, and we are going to talk about electrostatic induction. So in this case, what is the first step is, I'll have a sphere. So I'll have a sphere, I'll just take the help of this. So if I have a sphere here, so I have a sphere here, and what I do is I bring a rod. Now see here, since I want to charge it positively, so what I am going to do is I am going to bring a rod which is negatively charged. Very quickly you will understand why I am talking about this. Now since this sphere is a metal, so positive charges will be induced on the nearer side because positive will be attracted here, and negative charges will be induced on the other side. these positive and negative charges which are shown in the sphere are the charges of the sphere only, because it's a metal. So metal is made up of positive and negative charges, lot of free electrons. So free electrons will be repelled by this negative charge and it will go to the farthest distance. And positive, the remaining positive of it is going to be very near, because there will be an attraction between positive and negative charges. So this is one thing what I'll have. Now what will be the second step? The second step is I don't want these negative charges on this. So try to understand this, that the ground is a source. Okay, a ground basically is a source which can take as many charges as possible. So it's a large collection, you can say a ground is a large collection of negative charges. So here what if I do, the next step is, I will be connecting this to the ground. So all the negative charges here now will flow to the ground, and now don't remove this. So what figure I will be getting next? After this I will be getting a figure something like this, and here it is going to be negative and here it is going to be positive, and of course this is grounded. So once this, you can remove this wire after grounding. So you can remember that now we will only have positive and negative charges like this. Why these positive charges could not go to the ground? Because they are attracted by the force of attraction from this side. From this side, if you see, they are attracted by this negative charge, and therefore this negative charge is not letting this positive charge to go to the ground, and therefore only the negative charges here will go to the ground. Now after this we are left with this figure. So now what we will do? Now we will remove this rod, and once we remove the rod, then these charges, see, these charges will try to occupy the space which they will be containing minimum potential energy. So it will try to redistribute actually, and these four charges will redistribute basically in this way. So you will have a positive here, you have positive, positive, and this is how you can charge it positively. So this is by induction. So nowhere you have touched the charge body with the body, and this is how basically you will get the charge on a sphere. If it has been asked that you need to charge a body something like this, let us suppose I say in the exam you get a question that how you will charge this negative something like this. So what you have to do, now you have to see that what will be your first step, whether you have to bring your rod which is negative or positively charged. So here what you have to do is, here you have to, if I talk of this figure, so here what you have to do is, you have to bring a charge positive. So this positive, so negative will be here and iska positive is going to be here. Again you will find that you ground this part next. So ground is a vast source of negative charges. तो जो negative charges है ये इन positive charges को neutralize कर देंगे, और you can say that these positive charges will now flow and therefore will be lost, and therefore now it is going to be only this figure. And once you now remove the rod, what will happen? You will find that it will be a negatively charged sphere. So this is what basically the method of induction. Another thing, if I say, let us suppose I have two spheres like this. Okay, these are the two spheres I have, and now if I bring a rod like this, say I bring a positive rod here, so obviously the closer end is going to be negative. Now say this is acting as one full body, hai na ye? So this is going to be positive and the farthest one is going to be positive. So this is how you will find that the charges, induction of the charges will take place. In gold leaf electroscope, okay, if I have a gold leaf electroscope and now I will not touch, and this is the knob, brass knob, and this is the metal wires, and this is the gold leaf. Now what I do is I bring a rod, and this is, say I am not touching it now. So if I am not touching it, what will happen? Positive will induce negative, and this negative basically will try to redistribute throughout the wires. So here you will find that you will have negative, and negative will repel, and therefore you say that you have charged the gold leaf with negative charges, and again it will indicate the presence of charges on this glass rod. So even if you're not touching, if you're touching it, then the charges here are going to be positive, and if you're not touching it, then the charges are going to be negative. So like an MCQ, they can ask you, they can show 4 figures and then they are not touching it, and then they show the charges on the gold leaf electroscope. Then you will find that if it is not touching and your positive rod is brought close, then the charges on the gold leaf is going to be negative. So it is more of understanding, don't have to rote learn. And this charges, the like how many charges will be induced. So this amount of charges which will be induced on the metal sphere will depend upon the material of the metal sphere, whether it is more conducting, it is less conducting. So in details also this thing we will be seeing it afterwards, but this is what basically is the process of charging a body by induction. So just quickly we'll just go through this. So what is the electrostatic induction? Electrostatic induction means without touching. So electrostatic induction means that you are charging a body without bringing it in physical contact with the charged body. And what you do is, if I want to charge the sphere positive, you bring the negative part, and when you bring the negative rod, positive will be nearer and the negative will be far off. Ground is a vast storage of negative charges. The negative charges will flow to the ground, and then you remove the rod, so you will find that positive charges are distributed uniformly. And similarly, if you have to charge it negatively, I just told you the way. Then if you have two spheres in contact like this, then the distribution of it is going to be positive, negative. Now see here, if you want to see intermediate step of this, intermediate step basically this will be positive, negative, negative का यहाँ पे positive, वहाँ पे positive का negative, and then again positive. So since these are touching each other, this will get neutralized basically, and therefore the overall figure is going to be the negative on this side and positive on this side. If, okay, let's see here, if I say you have a spheres like this, okay, let's see, you have two spheres like this, and now you bring a rod. Let us suppose you are bringing a rod like this. So here what it will be? Positive. This side is going to be negative. This side is going to be positive. This side is going to be negative. 1 2 3 4 5 1 2 3 4 5. So this will not be there because conservation of charges are going to be there, and this side is going to be positive. So this is how the distribution will take place if they are not touching. So I told you the way. When you are bringing a charged body, right, near an uncharged body, then this separation of these positive and negative charges, you can see that the separation of positive and negative charges, so this separation of positive and negative charges has taken place, and this phenomena basically is known as polarization. So you say that your object has been polarized, your sphere has been polarized. It's a common experience, like if we have on a dry hair, if you try to rub a comb, then that comb, okay, gets the ability of attracting small bits of paper. So see here, if you have a comb, let us suppose say this is a comb. This is a comb. You rub it with your hair, dry hair, and then what you do is you try to bring it closer to the small bits of paper. This is bits of paper. What you will find that these bits of paper will get attracted towards the comb. So your bits of paper basically will get attracted towards the comb and it may cling on it. So it's basically something, you will have it like this. Now why this phenomena is there? Because when the comb rubs through dry hair, it becomes charged due to friction. So your comb has now become charged. The charged comb now has the ability to attract small bits of paper due to electrostatic induction. What will happen? There will be an electrostatic induction. If I just talk of a big paper, let us suppose I have a paper here and say the comb is positively charged, then the negative will come here on this side and positive will be coming on the other side. And therefore what you say is, you say that your paper has got polarized. Your paper has got polarized because the separation of the charges has taken place. So now when the paper has got polarized, now see which one is nearer. The negative one is nearer and positive one is far off. So the force of attraction between positive and negative, and the force of repulsion between positive and positive. So which will dominate? The force of attraction. So your force of attraction is much greater than your force of repulsion. And therefore what will be the net effect? The net effect is the attraction. So when comb run through one's dry hair, attract a small bits of paper. So this is the explanation of it, and I think you can give it in your own words also. So you say the paper gets polarized and therefore it gets attracted towards the comb. The opposite charges will attract more. Your force of attraction is more as compared to the repulsion between the two negative charges. So this is what we had, right? Now there is one question. Okay, it's a nice question, just think about it. Okay, let us suppose if I say I have a soap bubble. Okay, I have a soap bubble, and initially the soap bubble, this is radius, initially the radius is r, and m is the mass of the soap bubble. So here what will basically the total net charge is going to be 0, right? Now what is happening is, what I do is, by any ways I charge this soap bubble, I give a positive charge to it. So I give a positive charge to the soap bubble, or what I do is I give a negative charge to the soap bubble. So I do it like this. So by any ways what I am doing is I am charging the soap bubble positive and negative. Now if I now tell you, let m dash be the mass of this new bubble which you have charged, and r dash be its radius. Similarly here, m dash, let it its mass, and r dash its radius. So will there be any change? Okay, will there be any change in m dash and r dash after charging? Okay, now see here, positive charge indicates that the electrons has been removed. So when you are removing the electron, even electron, the mass of the electron is very small, but still it is not 0, hai na? So you will find that when you are removing an electron, then the mass will be less. So you will find that m dash will be less than m. The mass which is removed will be so small, because if you see, the mass of the electron is very small. So if you talk in those terms, you will find that you will not be able to make out, but still theoretically you will find that your mass will be reduced because it's a positive charge, and because of the repulsion of these charges, you will find that your radius r dash will be greater than r. In the second case, you will find that the negative charges are on the soap bubble. So if the negative charges on the soap bubble, means more electrons are there, and therefore here the mass will be more than this mass, and again there will be negative, there will be a force of repulsion. So because of this, your r dash will be greater than r. So this is the reasoning for this numerical. So whenever you are charging body negatively, the mass of the body will increase, and if you are charging the body positively, then the mass of the body is decreasing. Now let's try to do this. Think over, okay? If I say how much positive and negative charges, are there in 250 ml of cup containing water. It's basically, you have a cup here, okay, and in this cup there is 250 ml of water. So how many positive and negative charges are going to be there? So this is what we have to see. Now see here, remember this 1 ml is equal to 1 gram, okay, because we have to use the Avogadro's hypothesis. Now when you talk of water, water is H2O, so hydrogen is 16, okay, this is your atomic mass number, and hydrogen is 2, so basically 16 plus 2, 18. So according to Avogadro's hypothesis, 18 gram, or you say mole concept, 18 grams is nothing but it is 1 mole of water, and then this 1 mole of water will contain Avogadro's number Na. Na is basically 6.023 into 10 to the power 23. So 18 grams water, if you have 18 grams water, then if you have 18 grams of water, then how many molecules of water will be in this? It will be 6.023 into 10 to the power 23. 1 molecule, है ना? And in one molecule of water, how many positive charges and how many negative charges? Oxygen, how many positive charges? 8, 9, 10, है ना? So you will find that there will be 10 positive charges in 1. So 10 positive charges and 10 electrons, so 10 negative charges. So 1 ml water mein you have this part. So they are asking you how much positive and negative charges are there in 250 ml. The first 250 ml में कितने molecules होंगे? So in 250 ml means 250 grams. So in 250 grams, how much will be the number? Let it be x. So you will find that x will be equal to 6.023 into 10 to the power 23 into 250 upon 18. So this will be basically the number of, this is going to be the number of molecules which are going to be there in 250 grams of water. Now each molecule have what? How many positive charges? 10. So positive charges and negative charges in water is same, na? So जितने positive charges उतने negative charges. So what will be the positive charges? Positive charges will be equal to 6.023 into 10 to the power 23 into 250 upon 18. इतने molecules है और एक molecule में कितने हैं? 10. So this will be multiplied by 10. So this much number of positive charges will be there. If you try to simplify this, you will get your answer as 1.33 into 10 to the power 7 coulomb. So this will be positive charges, and how many negative charges? Negative charges is also going to be the same. So negative charges is going to be minus 1.33 into 10 to the power 7 coulomb. So it's a nice numerical. Go through this. This thing can be changed. Now they can ask you how much positive and negative charges are there in 100 ml. They can ask you 50 ml. So whatever they are asking you, just remember, since ml is in liters, you have to convert it into grams. 1 ml is equal to 1 gram because density of water is 1. And then you will find that 118 gram is equal to Avogadro's number, these many number of molecules. And one molecule has got 10 positive and 10 negative charges. So that many number into 10 will give you the positive and negative charges. So this is what we have. Now a very important law, like in class 11th you must have studied about gravitational. Okay, let's try to compare it first. So now in class 11th you had studied about gravitational law, right? So we had Newton's law of gravitation. Now see, in Newton's law of gravitation you have studied that if you have two masses m1 and if you have m2 separated by a distance r, then this force is directly proportional to masses, product of masses, inversely proportional to r square. And if you remove this proportionality, you get a constant F is equal to G m1 m2 upon r square. So this m1 will be getting attracted by m2 and m2 will be getting attracted by m1. So force on 1 because of 2 is same as force on 2 because of 1, but maybe the opposite, and this is going to be the opposite direction. And here you will find that the forces are always going to be attractive. So these forces are going to be attractive. You will never say that mass m1 will be repelled by mass m2. You will always say mass m1 will always be attracted by the other mass. So these forces are attractive. And in between the masses, let us suppose if I say I have mass m1, I have mass m2, and in between the masses, let us suppose I have water now instead of air or vacuum. Then also you will find that F will be equal to G m1 m2 upon r square. So it is independent of material or medium between masses. And that's how you will find that since it is not depending upon the medium between the masses, it's a universal law. It's followed everywhere, exactly same. It is not depending upon the medium. Now, on the same lines, what we have is we have Coulomb's law. We have Coulomb's law in electrostatics. Now, in Coulomb's law of electrostatics, it says that, right, if I have two charges, Q1 and Q2. So what is Q1 and Q2? Q1, Q2 are point charges. This is important. Okay, we are talking about point charges. And what are point charges? The point charges means the magnitude of the charge is small as compared to the separation between the charges. Like you had the concept of point object. Remember you had the concept of point object. Point object means what? If the separation or the distance covered by the object is very large as compared to its size, then that is known as a point object. Like for example, train can be considered as a point object even though it's a big train, but the distance it covers is so large that the dimensions of the train can be neglected and it can be considered as a point object. So similarly, if I have charges Q1 and Q2 and they are separated by a very large distance as compared to the dimensions of the charges, then this can be considered as a point charge. And please remember, the Coulomb's law is valid for point charges only. So if I have 2 point charges Q1 and Q2 and they are separated say by a distance r, then this force, now see, there can be force of attraction or force of repulsion. So this force can be attractive or repulsive depending upon the charge. So here the force of attraction or repulsion between the charges is directly proportional to the magnitude of the charges, is inversely proportional to r square. And now if I remove this proportionality, I get F is equal to small k, Q1 Q2 upon r square. And this small k is equal to 1 upon 4 pi epsilon naught. Okay, now this terminology is going to be new, but try to understand it. This value of k is 1 upon 4 pi epsilon naught. And this value of 1 upon 4 pi epsilon naught is 9 into 10 to the power 9 Newton meter square Coulomb minus 2. How did you get the value of this k? K is what? See, Newton meter square and per Coulomb square. This value of k, and k is what? 1 upon 4 pi epsilon naught. So if you compare Coulomb's law and Newton's law of gravitation, the first point is, in case of Newton's law of gravitation, the forces are always attractive. In case of Coulomb's law, the forces are attractive or repulsive. This is the first thing. Second, you have seen that here it did not depend upon the medium, but you will find that the force of attraction or repulsion, this Coulomb's law, it depends upon medium between charges, and therefore it is not a universal law, Now force will be maximum. Force is maximum when medium between charges is vacuum, and force is minimum when the medium between the charges is metal. So if you remember this part ki force kab, when the force is going to be maximum, when the force is going to be minimum, it is going to be maximum when the two charges are kept in vacuum, and it will be minimum when the metal, basically you will find that the between the two charges the medium is metal. They will not experience any charge if it is metal, because if you have two charges, then we will see this with the help of an equation. So if you remember this, it is good. Otherwise we will be seeing this with the help of an equation also. And this epsilon naught, okay, this epsilon naught is known as permittivity of free space. Now this permittivity of free space, it basically it is dealing with the electric field lines. So how much electric field lines it is able to permit through the given medium. So that is basically related to permittivity. And this value of epsilon naught, it is not required. See, you have to remember this value of 1 upon 4 pi epsilon naught. This value is going to be important. 9 into 10 to the power 9 units. So you can always get it from this. And epsilon naught value is 8.854 into 10 to the power minus 12. Now you can see this unit wise. It is going to be Coulomb square, Newton minus 1 and M minus 2. So remember this value of K. It is going to be helpful to you in case of numericals. And this is what is Coulomb's law. So if you state the Coulomb's law, it states that the force of attraction or repulsion between 2 point charges is directly proportional to the product of charges and inversely proportional to the square of distance between them. And obviously the direction of this force is along the line joining the two charges. If I say this is plus, so this is plus and so this is minus. So plus and minus, they will be getting attracted. How they will be attracted, in which direction? It will be along the line joining the two charges. So this is how the force of attraction is going to be there, or maybe the force of repulsion. Now here we can define what is 1 coulomb with the help of Coulomb's law, right? If with the help of Coulomb's law, if they are asking you define 1 coulomb, you have to define 1 coulomb. So we already know that F is equal to 1 upon 4 pi epsilon naught Q1 Q2 upon R square. So if I say Q1 is equal to Q2 is equal to 1 coulomb, and I keep R is equal to 1 meter, and you find that what will be the force? F is equal to 1 upon 4 pi epsilon naught 1 upon 1. So this comes out to be 9 into 10 to the power 9 Newton, because value of 1 upon 4 pi epsilon naught is 9 into 10 to the power 9. So if you find that the force of attraction or repulsion, okay, if you find that the force of attraction or repulsion is equal to 9 into 10 to the power 9 Newton, and if the separation between the distance is 1 meter, then the charge on each is going to be 1 coulomb. So 1 coulomb is the charge which, when placed at a distance of 1 meter from equal and similar charges in vacuum, will repel it with a force of 9 into 10 to the power 9 Newton. So with this equation only, there is no need to remember this definition. You can put it in your own words. If you are putting Q1, Q2, 1 coulomb, R 1 meter, then your force between the charges is 9 into 10 to the power 9. So this is going to be your definition of 1 coulomb. So if the force of attraction and repulsion between the two charges is 9 into 10 to the power 9, when the separation between the charges is 1 meter, then each charge is 1 coulomb. Now 1 coulomb is, you will say, ma'am, 1, if I say I have a body whose charge is 5 coulomb, if I say I have a body, okay, I have say this is a object and I say it's a 5 coulomb charge on it, but this coulomb 5 coulomb charge is a very large value. 1 coulomb charge is also a very large value, because you will see that so many electrons will be required to make a charge of 1 coulomb. See, a Q is equal to Ne. So if I want to have a charge of 1 coulomb, then how many electrons are required? Into 1.6 into 10 to the power minus 19. So number of electrons required is 1 upon 1.6 into 10 to the power minus 19. So it is 10 to the power 19 upon 1.6. These many numbers, it's a very large number. So if I say 1 coulomb itself is very large, so 5 coulomb definitely is going to be very large value. So you really can't charge a body with 1 coulomb. 1 coulomb is a very large charge. So if you are dealing with the numericals, you will always come across the numericals 1 millicoulomb, you will come across 1 microcoulomb, you will come across 1 nanocoulomb. So 1 millicoulomb means 10 to the power minus 3 coulomb, 1 micro means 10 to the power minus 6 coulomb, and 1 nano means 10 to the power minus 9 coulomb. So this is what we have. So I hope this part is clear to you. In the next class we will be dealing with the two charges, okay, and then we will see that what happens if between the two charges there is some other medium. So how the force will get modified. So these things will be taken up in the next class. Thank you, students.